They keep telling us that the folks in the House, the Senate, and even the White House are standing behind our Second Amendment rights. But let's be honest, it sure doesn't feel like they're in any rush to prove it. Every week, it seems like there's a fresh attack on our right to carry, our ability to own firearms, or on freedoms we've assumed were long settled. In today's breakdown, I'll walk you through three key issues. House Resolution 38, which could give national recognition to concealed carry permits. House Resolution 284, designed to fix due process gaps in the background check system. And finally, why red flag laws remain the biggest constitutional threat Congress keeps tiptoeing around. Before we dive in, let's talk context. We're in a moment where the majority in Washington claims to support gun owners. You'd expect that kind of alignment to lead to bold, pro-firearm legislation. Instead, what we get are scattered. Small wins, not the sweeping protections millions of law-abiding Americans are hoping for. If you followed federal gun bills for any amount of time, you know how it works. Bold ideas are floated, but by the time they get anywhere near the president's desk, they've been watered down. Right now, we've got two serious pieces of legislation that could change how we carry and defend our rights, but even those are more modest than they should be. That's why I'm particularly invested in House Resolution 38. Even if the political environment that spawned it still feels lackluster. House Resolution 38 is better known as the Constitutional Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act. Think about how your driver's license works. If you're licensed to drive in Texas, you don't have to apply for a brand new license just to drive through Oklahoma or Arizona. You're recognized as a legal driver. The same logic ought to apply to our right to carry a concealed firearm. If your home state trusts you enough to issue a carry permit, then that permit should be honored when you cross state lines. That's the core of House Resolution 38, national reciprocity. But this isn't just about convenience. It's about protecting people from getting blindsided by inconsistent laws from state to state. Say you live in Ohio and drive into Maryland to visit relatives. If you're carrying concealed, even with a valid permit, you could end up facing felony charges the moment you cross that line. There are real-world cases of this happening. Honest gun owners suddenly treated like criminals just because state law doesn't match up. This bill aims to end that nonsense and ensure that a concealed carry permit has real teeth across state lines. If House Resolution 38 becomes law, it would give people like you and me a legal shield while traveling armed. You wouldn't have to memorize a complex and constantly changing list of which states honor which permits. No more worrying if North Carolina respects your Alabama license or if Colorado is going to give you grief. If you've got the permit and pass the background checks, your constitutional right travels with you. For folks who hit the road for work or family, that's a huge win. It would also help those of us hauling gear across several states on longer trips. But let's be clear, just because it passes doesn't mean anti-gun states will roll over. Some of them will try to sidestep the law, pass local restrictions, or just outright defy it. We've seen it before with sanctuary cities. And you better believe states like California and New York will test the limits of any federal carry law. That means legal battles are almost guaranteed. So, while this law would give us something to point to in court, you can still expect challenges and inconsistent enforcement. Still, having a federal statute in your corner is a major upgrade from the chaotic mess we're dealing with now. That's a win in my book. Now let's switch gears to House Resolution 284, the Firearms Due Process Protection Act. Sounds promising, right? Like it might stop the abuse of red flag laws or guard against wrongful confiscation, but in reality, it's a lot narrower than the name implies. What it does do is impose a 60-day deadline for the federal government to respond to someone who was denied during a background check. That means if you get flagged, the feds have a fixed window to resolve your case or give you a path to appeal. That's nothing. Nobody wants to be stuck in red tape forever after a bad call on a background check. But let's be honest, it doesn't tackle the heart of the issue. It doesn't stop states from enacting or expanding red flag laws, and it doesn't address the way those laws violate due process by design. Getting a faster appeal is nice, but it's a band-aid, not a solution. It won't prevent a judge from stripping you of your rights based on hearsay, and it won't fix the fact that in some states, the bar to trigger these laws is alarmingly low. Which brings us to the biggest threat we're still facing: red flag laws themselves. If you've been paying attention, you already know how dangerous these can be. In many cases, someone can lose their firearms without a trial, without charges, and sometimes without ever knowing they were being accused of anything. All it takes is a claim from a family member, ex-partner, or even a neighbor. Depending on the state, a judge can order law enforcement to seize your firearms before you've had the chance to respond. That's not justice, that's guilty until proven innocent. These laws are spreading fast, and while they're marketed as common sense solutions, they create huge opportunities for abuse. The idea that someone can lose their constitutional rights because of an accusation not a crime is terrifying. And unfortunately, too many in Congress still won't address that head-on. Let's be honest, nobody wants guns falling into the wrong hands. But red flag laws? They cast an overly broad net and rely far too much on personal bias and vague claims. One heated argument, one bitter ex, or even just a grudge from a neighbor could be enough to trigger a confiscation. And even if you eventually clear your name, the damage is done. You're left footing the bill for legal representation, taking time off work, and dealing with the stress of being treated like a threat, all without a criminal conviction. If lawmakers are serious about defending the Second Amendment, their first priority should be this: no one should ever be stripped of their firearm rights without a clear, evidence-based, and transparent judicial process. Yet neither H.R. 38 nor H.R. 284 confront this head-on. That's the real disappointment. H.R. 38 would certainly improve reciprocity across state lines, and H.R. 284 might correct some errors in the background check system, but red flag laws remain a massive blind spot at the federal level. Sure, some folks will say, well, H.R. 38 is a step in the right direction, and it is, no doubt. National reciprocity could be a game changer for millions of responsible permit holders, especially those who cross state lines regularly. But we can't let that win distract us from the larger problem. If a single judge based on hearsay can still order your firearms seized without a trial, then your rights aren't protected. They're merely rented, subject to being revoked based on someone else's opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Does H.R. 38 give you confidence that things are moving forward, or are you worried it might get diluted or ignored by certain states? Are you frustrated that H.R. 284 barely scratches the surface while red flag laws are left untouched? Drop a comment and let's talk about it, because it's going to take all of us standing together to drive meaningful change. Now, let's look ahead for a moment. Imagine H.R. 38 passes, makes it through the House, clears the Senate, and gets signed into law. Suddenly, your concealed carry permit is valid across the entire country. Sounds great, right? But here's the catch: what happens in places like California, New York, Illinois, or Hawaii? These are states with a long track record of resisting federal pro-gun measures. There's a good chance some of them will refuse to comply or drag their feet on enforcement, at least initially. That could spark legal battles and maybe even push the issue to the Supreme Court. Does that mean we give up? Absolutely not. Having a federal law behind you is still a major improvement over navigating a tangled web of state-by-state restrictions. Even if you get hassled, you're in a much stronger position legally with a national statute to point to. Look at how some states defy federal immigration laws. This could be a similar fight. But the Second Amendment gives us solid constitutional ground to stand on. A court decision that affirms nationwide reciprocity could finally clarify the limits of state interference with your right to carry. Still, none of that helps if red flag laws are left unchecked. We could win reciprocity and still find ourselves disarmed due to a false or exaggerated report. These laws are already on the books in a growing number of states, and Congress hasn't made a serious attempt to set boundaries or require due process. That tells me we're still fighting against a mindset in Washington that either doesn't understand or simply doesn't respect the Second Amendment. So what can we do about it? First, stay engaged. Just because one pro-gun bill makes headway doesn't mean the battle is over. Keep reaching out to your representatives and senators. Let them know you support strong due process protections and that red flag laws without proper oversight are unacceptable. Second, get involved at the local level. If you live in a restrictive state, show up at public meetings, join local gun rights groups, and speak out when new rules are proposed. Local officials often count on public silence to push their agendas. Be the voice they can't ignore. Third, share what you know. If H.R. 38 passes, there will be a period of confusion as some states resist implementation. We'll need to keep each other informed about where the law is being honored and where it's being challenged. If you travel with your firearm, your best defense is accurate, up-to-date information from fellow gun owners. Our community knows how this works. We've watched public safety get used time and again as an excuse to erode our rights. We've seen laws passed with good intentions get twisted by anti-gun bureaucrats. And we know that unless we stay vigilant, we'll keep getting laws that claim to help while ignoring the biggest threats. H.R. 284 is a perfect example. It might help a few wrongly denied by the NICS system, but it does nothing to address red flag abuses. And let's not forget, when bills like H.R. 38 get close to passing, lawmakers often start adding amendments to secure more votes. That can dilute the bill or even sneak in new restrictions. So while it's important to support it, we also have to read the fine print and keep our lawmakers accountable. We need to make sure what gets passed is actually what we were promised. That's going to do it for today. If you found this breakdown helpful, hit that like button, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss a post. And remember, real progress comes when we stay united and informed. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.